The phone rang, shattering the silence of our kitchen. I reached for it, but Bradley snatched it away, his eyes darting nervously. "I'll get it," he mumbled, disappearing into his study. I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, sauce forgotten on the stove. That wasn't like Bradley at all. In 12 years of marriage, we'd never hidden calls from each other. Something was off, and I could feel it in my bones. "Mom, is dinner ready?" Emily's voice startled me out of my thoughts. Our 12-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, nose buried in her phone. "Almost, sweetie. Why don't you set the table?" As Emily begrudgingly put down her phone, I stirred the sauce, my mind racing. When had things changed? Bradley and I used to be the perfect couple, college sweethearts who'd built a life together. Now it felt like we were drifting apart, and I couldn't pinpoint why. The study door opened, and Bradley emerged, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Sorry about that, honey. Work call. On a Sunday evening?" I raised an eyebrow. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "You know how it is. The Johnson account is giving us trouble." I nodded, unconvinced. The Bradley I married would have shared the details, asked for my input. This Bradley was a stranger. Dinner was a quiet affair, punctuated only by Emily's chatter about school and her friends. I watched Bradley push his food around his plate, his mind clearly elsewhere. "How about we all go for ice cream after dinner?" I suggested, desperate to recapture some of our old family magic. Emily's face lit up, but Bradley shook his head. "Sorry, I've got some work to finish up. You two go ahead." As I cleared the dishes, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window. When had we become these people? This isn't what I'd imagined when I said "I do" all those years ago. "Mom?" Emily's voice pulled me back to reality. "Can we still go for ice cream?" I forced a smile. "Of course, sweetie. Let me grab my purse." As we walked to the ice cream parlor, the warm evening air did little to dispel the chill in my heart. Emily chattered away, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Mom, why is Dad always working now?" she asked suddenly, her voice small. I stumbled, caught off guard by her perceptiveness. "Well, honey, sometimes adults have to work hard to provide for their families." She frowned, unconvinced. "But he never wants to do anything with us anymore." My heart ached at the truth in her words. "I'm sure it's just temporary, sweetie. Things will get better." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Back home, I found Bradley in his study, door firmly closed. I knocked gently. "Brad, can we talk?" He opened the door, looking haggard. "What is it, Laura?" "I'm swamped here." I miss you. We miss you. Emily was asking about you earlier." His expression softened for a moment, then hardened again. "I'm doing this for us, Laura, for our future." "But what about our present?" I pleaded. "We need you here now." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I can't do this right now. We'll talk later, okay?" As the door closed in my face, I felt a surge of anger and hurt. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the life I'd signed up for. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. "Your husband is lying to you. Meet me tomorrow at noon, Central Park bench near the duck pond. Come alone." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Who was this? What did they know? As I deleted the message, one thing became clear. Our perfect life was about to shatter, and I had no idea how to stop it. I stared at the moving boxes piled high in our living room, a lump forming in my throat. This wasn't how I'd imagined spending my 40th birthday. "Mom, where should I put these?" Emily asked, struggling with a box labeled kitchen. "Just leave it there, sweetie. We'll sort it out later." I forced a smile, trying to hide my unease. Bradley burst through the front door, grinning from ear to ear. "Isn't this great? Back in my old hometown, new job, fresh start for all of us." I nodded weakly, remembering the career I'd left behind in the city. "Yeah, great." "Oh, come on, Laura. This is a fantastic opportunity for us," Bradley said, his enthusiasm grating on my nerves. "For you, you mean?" I muttered under my breath. "What was that?" "Nothing," I said, plastering on a fake smile. "Just thinking about all the unpacking we need to do." The doorbell rang, saving me from further conversation. I opened it to find Cynthia, Bradley's mother, standing there with a casserole dish. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she trilled, pushing past me into the house. "Oh, Bradley, darling, how wonderful to have you back home." I watched as she enveloped Bradley in a hug, completely ignoring Emily and me. Some things never change. "Laura," Cynthia said, finally acknowledging my presence. "I hope you'll be able to adjust to small-town life. It's quite different from your big city ways. I'm sure I'll manage, I replied, gritting my teeth. Cynthia bustled into the kitchen, making herself at home. Now, let me show you how to properly organize this space. I'm sure you'll need the help. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was Bradley's mother. But as she rearranged my carefully packed kitchen items, criticizing everything from my choice of cutlery to my cooking utensils, I felt my patience wearing thin. "Mom," Bradley called from the living room. "I forgot to mention I invited some old friends over for dinner tonight to celebrate our move." I froze, my hands full of mismatched Tupperware. "Tonight? Bradley, we just got here. The house is a mess, and I haven't even unpacked the groceries yet." He waved off my concerns. "It's just a casual get-together. They won't mind." Cynthia piped up, "Oh, don't worry, dear. I'll take care of everything. You clearly need the help." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. When I opened them, I saw Emily watching me with concern. "Mom, are you okay?" she whispered. I nodded, pulling her into a hug. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little overwhelmed." As the evening wore on, our house filled with Bradley's old friends. I plastered on a smile, playing the role of the happy wife while Cynthia held court in the kitchen, regaling everyone with stories of Bradley's childhood. "Remember when you won the state spelling bee?" she gushed. "Always knew you'd do great things, unlike some people who give up their careers at the drop of a hat." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. "Mom," Bradley warned, but the damage was done. I excused myself, fleeing to the back porch. The cool night air did little to calm my racing heart. What had I done? I'd given up everything. My job, my friends, my independence, for this. The porch door creaked open behind me. I turned, expecting Bradley, but instead found Emily. "Mom," she said softly, "I heard Grandma talking to Dad. She said you're not good enough for him, that he could do better." My heart shattered. I pulled Emily close, stroking her hair. "Oh, sweetie, that's not true. Your grandma she just wants what's best for your dad." "But what about what's best for you?" Emily asked, her voice muffled against my shirt. I had no answer. As we stood there, the sounds of laughter drifting from inside, I realized I'd never felt more alone. Something had to change, and soon. But what could I do, trapped in this new life I never wanted? The porch door opened again. This time it was Bradley. "Laura? Mom's looking for you. She needs help serving dessert." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Coming," I said, my voice hollow. As I walked back into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap of my own making. The library's quiet hum was a welcome respite from the chaos at home. I shelved books methodically, losing myself in the familiar routine. It wasn't the high-powered career I'd left behind, but it was something that was mine. "Laura, dear?" Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, approached. "There's a call for you at the front desk. It's your mother-in-law." My stomach clenched. What could Cynthia want now? I picked up the phone, bracing myself. "Hello, Cynthia." "Laura, I've had the most wonderful idea," she gushed. "We should all go to the lake house this weekend. It'll be perfect for family bonding." I bit back a groan. "This weekend? I'm not sure if—" "Nonsense. I've already spoken to Bradley, and he thinks it's marvelous. Emily will love it too, I'm sure." Of course, she'd gone behind my back. "Cynthia, I really don't think—" "It's settled then. We'll leave Friday afternoon. Do try to be punctual, dear." The line went dead before I could protest further. I slumped against the desk, defeat washing over me. That evening, I broached the subject with Bradley. "Your mother called about a lake house trip?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Oh yeah, sounds great, doesn't it?" "Bradley, we can't just drop everything and go. I have work, and Emily has her dance recital practice." He finally met my gaze, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Come on, Laura. It's just a weekend. Mom's trying to make an effort here. Can't you do the same?" I bit my tongue, choking back the words I really wanted to say. "Fine, for Emily's sake." Friday arrived too soon. As we packed the car, Cynthia bustled around, criticizing everything from my choice of snacks to the way I folded Emily's clothes. "Really, Laura?" she tutted. "Don't you know how to pack properly? Here, let me show you." I clenched my fists, forcing a smile. "Thanks, Cynthia, but I've got it under control." The drive to the lake house was tense. Emily sat silently in the back, headphones firmly in place. Bradley chatted with his mother, both of them ignoring me completely. As we pulled up to the lake house, I had to admit it was beautiful. The sun glinted off the water, and the air smelled of pine and possibility. "Isn't it wonderful?" Cynthia crowed. "Bradley, remember when we used to come here every summer?" "How could I forget, Mom? Best times of my life." I lugged our bags inside, feeling like an outsider in my own family. The weekend crawled by in a haze of forced smiles and thinly veiled insults. Cynthia dominated every conversation, regaling us with tales of Bradley's childhood and not-so-subtle digs at my parenting. "Emily, darling," she said over dinner, "has your mother taught you how to make my famous pot roast yet?" "Oh, that's right, Laura isn't much of a cook, is she?" I gripped my fork tighter, willing myself not to react. On Sunday morning, I escaped to the dock, desperate for a moment of peace. The lake stretched out before me, calm and indifferent to my turmoil. "Mom?" Emily's voice startled me. "Are you okay?" I turned to find my daughter watching me with worried eyes. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just enjoying the view." She sat beside me, her legs dangling over the water. "I don't like it here," she confessed. "Grandma's always so mean to you." My heart ached. "Oh, honey, it's not. It's complicated. Adult relationships can be tricky sometimes. But Dad never stands up for you? Doesn't he love you anymore?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Before I could answer, Bradley's voice rang out from the house. "Laura, Mom needs help in the kitchen," I sighed, squeezing Emily's hand. "We should go back." As we walked towards the house, I caught sight of Bradley through the window. He was hunched over his phone, a secretive smile on his face. My stomach churned with a familiar dread. Just then his phone pinged loudly. Cynthia, passing by, glanced at the screen. Her eyes widened, then narrowed as she looked at me. "Laura, dear," she called, her voice sickly sweet. "Could you come here for a moment? There's something we need to discuss." I froze, my heart pounding. Whatever was coming, I knew it wouldn't be good. With a deep breath, I stepped into the house, bracing myself for the storm that was about to break. I stepped into the lake house, my heart pounding. Cynthia's saccharine smile sent chills down my spine. "Laura, dear," she cooed, "I couldn't help but notice something on Bradley's phone. I think you should see it." Bradley's head snapped up, his face paling. "Mom, that's private." But Cynthia had already thrust the phone into my hands. On the screen was a text message from someone named Amber. The words blurred before my eyes, but one phrase stood out. "Can't wait to see you again, baby." The room spun. I looked at Bradley, searching for denial, explanation, anything. But his guilty expression said it all. "How long?" I whispered. "Laura, it's not what you think." "How long?" I repeated, my voice stronger now. Cynthia interjected, her voice dripping with false concern. "Now, Laura, let's not jump to conclusions. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation." I whirled on her. "Stay out of this, Cynthia. This is between me and your son." Bradley stood, reaching for me. "Laura, please. It's just a work thing. Amber's a colleague." "A colleague you call baby?" I spat. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Emily appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" The sight of our daughter snapped me back to reality. I couldn't do this here, not in front of her. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. "Nothing, sweetie. Just a misunderstanding. Why don't you go pack your things? We're leaving." "But we're supposed to stay until tomorrow," Emily protested. "Plans change," I said firmly. "Please, Emily, just do as I ask." As Emily reluctantly trudged upstairs, I turned back to Bradley. "We'll discuss this at home, privately." The drive back was excruciating. Emily sat in the back seat, headphones on, oblivious to the tension crackling between Bradley and me. Cynthia had tried to intervene, but I'd shut her down with a glare that could have melted steel. At home, I sent Emily to her room, promising we'd talk later. Then I rounded on Bradley. "Explain," I demanded. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think, Laura. Amber's just a friend." "Don't lie to me," I exploded. "Friends don't text like that. How long has this been going on? Is this why you wanted to move back here?" Bradley's face hardened. "You know what? Maybe if you hadn't been so caught up in your own career, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for support." His words hit me like a slap. "My career? The one I gave up for you?" "Oh, please," he scoffed. "You've been resentful ever since we moved. You never gave this place a chance. You never gave my family a chance." "Your family?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean your mother, who's been undermining me at every turn? Who treats me like I'm not good enough for her precious son?" "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're always playing the victim." I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. Do you even love me anymore? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Bradley spoke, his voice low. I don't know, Laura. I don't know if I have for a long time. Something inside me shattered. I stumbled back, gripping the kitchen counter for support. I think, I said, my voice shaking, that you should leave. Tonight. I can't look at you right now. Bradley nodded, defeat etched in every line of his face. As he trudged upstairs to pack a bag, I sank to the floor, sobs racking my body. A small hand touched my shoulder. I looked up to see Emily, tears streaming down her face. Mom, she whispered, are you and Dad getting a divorce? I pulled her close, stroking her hair. I don't know, sweetie. I really don't know. As we clung to each other on the kitchen floor, I realized I had a decision to make. Fight for a marriage that might already be beyond saving, or find the strength to start over. Either way, nothing would ever be the same again. The days after Bradley left were a blur of tears and sleepless nights. I moved through the house like a ghost, barely eating, barely sleeping. Emily watched me with worried eyes, but I couldn't find the words to comfort her when I could barely hold myself together. It was on a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. I was folding laundry, mindlessly matching socks, when Emily burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. Mom, I got the lead in the school play, she exclaimed, waving a script in her hand. I forced a smile, trying to muster enthusiasm. That's wonderful, sweetie. What's the play? Romeo and Juliet, she said, her eyes shining. Then her face fell. But I need to stay after school for rehearsals. Dad usually picks me up, but... The unfinished sentence hung in the air, heavy with implications. I swallowed hard, pushing down the lump in my throat. Don't worry, I'll figure something out. Emily hesitated, then blurted out, Mom, is Dad living with Amber now? The sock I was holding slipped from my fingers. What, Emily, how do you know about Amber? She looked down, scuffing her toe against the carpet. I overheard Dad talking to her on the phone, before the lake house trip. He said he loved her. The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of the laundry basket, trying to steady myself. Emily, why didn't you tell me? Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't want to hurt you, and I thought maybe if I pretended everything was okay, it would be. I pulled her into a fierce hug, my own tears falling into her hair. Oh, sweetie, this isn't your burden to bear. I'm so sorry you've been carrying this secret. As Emily sobbed in my arms, a cold fury settled in my chest. Bradley hadn't just betrayed me, he'd put our daughter in an impossible position. After Emily had cried herself out and gone to her room, I reached for my phone with shaking hands. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Lily, it's Laura. I need your help. My best friend's voice was warm and concerned. Laura, what's wrong? It's Bradley, I said, my voice breaking. He's been having an affair. I think I need a divorce lawyer. Lily's sharp intake of breath crackled over the line. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Listen, I know a great family law attorney. I'll send you her details. But Laura, are you sure about this? I closed my eyes, seeing Emily's tear-stained face in my mind. I have to be. For Emily's sake, if nothing else. After hanging up, I sat on the bed, my mind racing. The thought of divorce terrified me. How would we manage financially? What would happen to Emily? But the alternative, staying in a loveless marriage, watching my daughter suffer in silence, was unthinkable. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Emily peeked in, her face pale and drawn. Mom, can I sleep in here tonight? I patted the bed beside me, and she crawled in, curling up against me like she used to when she was little. As I stroked her hair, a fierce determination welled up inside me. Emily, I said softly, I want you to know that whatever happens between your dad and me, it's not your fault, and I will always, always be here for you. She nodded against my shoulder, her voice muffled. Are you going to divorce Dad? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I took a deep breath, knowing my answer would change everything. I think I have to, sweetie, for both of us. As Emily's breathing evened out in sleep, I stared at the ceiling, my mind made up. Tomorrow, I would call the lawyer Lily recommended. Tomorrow, I would take the first step towards reclaiming my life and protecting my daughter. It wouldn't be easy. Bradley and Cynthia would fight me every step of the way. But as I held Emily close, I knew one thing for certain. I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands, like it contained more than just paper. It held the weight of my shattered world. I'd hired a private investigator last week using the money I'd been saving for Emily's college fund. It felt wrong, but I needed to know the truth. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Photos spilled out onto the kitchen table. Bradley and a young blonde woman, laughing over coffee, holding hands in the park, kissing outside an unfamiliar apartment building. My stomach churned as I flipped through them, each image a knife to my heart. The investigator's report was clinical, detailing times, dates, and locations. Bradley had been seeing this woman, Amber, for over a year. Since before we moved. Since before I gave up my career. A sob escaped my throat, quickly followed by another. I crumpled to the floor, the photos scattered around me like the pieces of my broken life. "Mom?" Emily's voice cut through my grief. I looked up to see her standing in the doorway, eyes wide with concern. I hastily wiped my tears, trying to gather the photos. "It's nothing, sweetie, just some work stuff." But Emily was too quick. She snatched one of the photos, her face paling as she recognized her father with another woman. Is this why Dad left?" she whispered. I nodded, unable to lie. "I'm so sorry, Emily. You shouldn't have to deal with this." She dropped the photo, her face hardening. "We need to confront him. And Grandma Cynthia, too. She knows, doesn't she?" Her maturity stunned me. I pulled her into a hug, marveling at her strength. "You're right. It's time we face this head on." I called Bradley, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "We need to talk, all of us, including your mother. Come to the house tonight." Hours later, we sat in the living room, Emily and I on one couch, Bradley and Cynthia on the other. The photos lay on the coffee table between us, an undeniable testament to Bradley's betrayal. "How could you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Bradley's face was ashen. "Laura, I can explain." "Explain what?" Emily interrupted, her voice sharp. "How you lied to us, how you made Mom give up everything for you." Cynthia bristled. "Now, Emily, that's no way to speak to your father." "And you," Emily rounded on her grandmother. "You knew, didn't you? You helped him hide it." Cynthia's silence was all the confirmation we needed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I want a divorce, Bradley. I can't do this anymore." The room exploded into chaos. Bradley pleaded, Cynthia shouted, Emily cried, but I stood firm, a strange calm settling over me. "Enough," I shouted, silencing them all. "This isn't up for debate. You've made your choices, Bradley. Now I'm making mine." I turned to Cynthia, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "And you never thought I was good enough for your precious son. Well, guess what? He wasn't good enough for me, for us." Cynthia's face turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you, after everything we've done for you, what you've done?" I laughed bitterly. "You've done nothing but undermine and belittle me from day one. Well, I'm done. I'm taking Emily, and we're leaving. Tonight." Bradley stood, reaching for me. "Laura, please. We can work this out." I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, Bradley. We can't. It's over." As I turned to leave, Cynthia's voice, cold and threatening, stopped me in my tracks. "If you leave now, you'll get nothing. We'll make sure of it. You'll be penniless, homeless. Is that what you want for Emily?" I froze, the weight of her threat crushing me. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, could I really walk away from it all? Could I subject Emily to a life of struggle just to escape this toxic marriage? As I stood there, torn between my desire for freedom and my fear of the unknown, I realized I was facing the biggest decision of my life. Whatever I chose next would shape not just my future, but Emily's as well. The clock was ticking, and I had to decide, now. Cynthia's threat hung in the air, suffocating me. I looked at Emily, her eyes wide with fear and determination. In that moment, I found my strength. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You don't get to threaten me anymore. Cynthia, I'm not afraid of you." Bradley stepped forward, his face a mask of desperation. "Laura, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Amber, I swear." I laughed bitterly. "End things? Bradley, you've been seeing her for over a year. You moved us here to be closer to her, didn't you?" His silence was all the confirmation I needed. "I trusted you," I continued, my voice breaking. "I gave up everything for you, my career, my friends, my life in the city, and this is how you repay me?" Emily squeezed my hand, her voice small but fierce. "Mom, we don't need them. We can make it on our own." Cynthia scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. You have nothing without us." No money, no home, no future. Think about Emily's education, Laura. Are you really willing to throw that away? I felt the weight of her words, the fear of an uncertain future. But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the times I'd felt small and insignificant in this house. I thought of Emily, forced to keep her father's secret. "We'll manage," I said, straightening my spine. "We've done it before, we'll do it again." Bradley's face hardened. "If you walk out that door, don't expect any help from me. I'll fight you for custody. I'll make sure you don't get a penny." "Dad," Emily cried, shock and hurt etched on her face. I felt a surge of rage. "You'd do that to your own daughter, after everything you've put her through?" "He's bluffing," Cynthia interjected, her voice sickly sweet. "Bradley, darling, you don't mean that. We can work this out as a family." But I saw the truth in Bradley's eyes. He'd choose his mother and his mistress over us. He always had. "Emily," I said, turning to my daughter, "this is your choice, too. If you want to stay with your father, I'll understand." Emily's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you kidding, after what he did, after what they both did?" She glared at Bradley and Cynthia. "I'm going with Mom." Pride swelled in my chest. My brave, beautiful girl. "Fine," Bradley spat. "Leave. But don't come crawling back when you can't make it on your own." I turned to face him, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "You know what, Bradley? I was successful before I met you. I built a career, a life, and I'll do it again, without you." I grabbed Emily's hand and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Cynthia's voice stopped me. "If you leave now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life," she hissed. "You're nothing without this family." I turned back, meeting her gaze. "No, Cynthia. I was nothing with this family, but not anymore." With that, I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air, Emily by my side. As we walked to the car, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in years, I felt free. We drove in silence for a while, the enormity of what we'd done settling over us. Then Emily spoke, her voice small in the darkness. "Mom, what are we going to do now?" I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. We had no home, little money, and an uncertain future. But we had each other, and that was a start. "I don't know, sweetie," I admitted, "but we'll figure it out together." As the lights of our old town faded in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. We were starting over, just the two of us against the world. It wouldn't be easy, but as I glanced at Emily's determined face, I knew we'd make it. The road stretched out before us, dark and unknown. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Whatever came next, we'd face it head on. Together. The key turned in the lock of my old apartment, and I pushed open the door with a mixture of trepidation and hope. Emily stepped in behind me, her eyes wide as she took in the dusty furniture and bare walls. "It's small," she said, her voice echoing in the empty space. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It is, but it's ours." We spent the next few days cleaning, unpacking the few belongings we'd managed to grab before leaving. It was hard work, but with each box we emptied, each room we made livable, I felt a sense of pride growing. We were rebuilding, one small step at a time. On our third night in the apartment, as we sat on the floor eating takeout, my phone rang. It was Bradley. "Laura," his voice was strained. "Please, can we talk about this? I made a mistake, but we can fix it. Come home." I closed my eyes, feeling the pull of familiarity, the temptation of an easier path. But then I looked at Emily, her face set in determination as she arranged our meager belongings, and I found my strength. "No, Bradley, this is our home now. You made your choice," he sighed, his voice turning cold. "Fine, but don't expect any help from me. You're on your own." As I hung up, Emily looked at me, worry etched on her face. "Was that Dad? What did he say?" I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Nothing important, sweetie. We're going to be okay." The next morning I woke early, determination coursing through me. I had a plan. I called my old boss, swallowing my pride as I explained my situation. To my surprise, she was sympathetic. "Laura, we've missed you. There's a position opening up next month. It's not as senior as your old role, but it's a start. Are you interested?" Tears of relief sprang to my eyes. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." With that piece of good news, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We could do this. We would do this. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into preparing for my new job, while helping Emily adjust to her new school. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I lay awake, terrified of the future, missing the comfort of my old life. But each morning I'd wake up and face the day with renewed determination. One evening, as Emily and I were cooking dinner in our tiny kitchen, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my parents standing there, arms laden with groceries and home-cooked meals. "Mom? Dad?" I stammered, shocked to see them. My mother pulled me into a fierce hug. "We're here to help, sweetheart. Whatever you need." As they bustled around our apartment, filling it with warmth and love, I felt the last pieces of my heart mending. We weren't alone in this. Months passed, and slowly but surely we found our rhythm. Emily thrived in her new school, making friends and excelling in her studies. I threw myself into my work, rediscovering the passion and drive I'd forgotten I had. One sunny Saturday, as Emily and I walked through the park near our apartment, she turned to me, her face serious. "Mom, are you happy? Do you ever regret leaving?" I paused, considering her question. I thought about the struggles we'd faced, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, but I also thought about the strength we'd found, the bond between us that had only grown stronger. "No, sweetie," I said, squeezing her hand. "I don't regret it. It's been hard, but we're building something beautiful here. Together." She smiled, a real genuine smile that lit up her whole face. "I'm glad we left. I'm proud of us, Mom." As we continued our walk, the sun warm on our faces, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were ready to face them. We had each other, and that was enough. Bradley and Cynthia were wrong. We weren't nothing without them. We were everything, strong, resilient, and full of love. And as I looked at my daughter, her head held high, and her steps confident, I knew that we had already won the most important battle of all. We had found ourselves again, and this time no one could take that away from us.